The Minnesota Timberwolves, 11 games into the season, and they're coming off a 3-game win streak. I haven't done an episode since this 3-game win streak, so we are riding the wave of good vibes. And the best way to start that, we have Charlie Walton on the show, an up-and-coming Timberwolves journalist. He is killing it with all of the stuff he does with Instagram and his writing. Super awesome guy. Charlie, how's life?
Well, you're too kind, and it's been good, man. It's been busy. Wolves are starting to figure some things out, and we talked, I believe, right before the season. Did a little Wolves all-time favorite player ranking. It's good to catch up. Like we've been learning a lot. So
perfect memory recall, man. We were together, like really in the dry drought, the desert of the off season, man. We were just like pulling stuff like, you know what? Let's just rank the top 10 Timberwolves we've ever seen. And most of it's from the bats of hell. But we are here, and like you said, good vibes. Timberwolves building some momentum on the season. And this episode, it's going to just be about what are some new takeaways, new trends we've noticed with this team about 10, 11 games into this regular season. This is, of course, a super great offensive team so far. Played a lot of bad teams. Had some really high highs, some very low lows, some nature of October, November basketball. Charlie, let's start the show by giving you the floor right away. So, Charlie, when looking at this Timberwolves team so far in the season, what is your first major takeaway from watching these first 11 games?
Yeah, you mentioned it. It's the offense. It's been borderline elite in a lot of these games, or at least during stretches of these games. And I think it, for the most part, has been kind of sustainable. They rank 5th in offensive rating, 7th points per game. And then the big one is 2nd in 3-point percentage. Jaden shooting 54%, Ant Conley 50%, and then Julius 40%. The question that comes, the 3-point shooting has been great. And the question that comes from that is it sustainable? Is Jaden going to shoot 54% on the season? Probably not. Is Ant going to shoot 50%? Probably not. But I think the reason I think it's sustainable is because the progressions the Wolves are taking to generate a lot of this offense, like you mentioned, how good it's been. A lot of it stems from Julius Randle. And when he's on the floor, the Wolves are a good 3-point shooting team. He creates a ton of open looks. And that's a really unique part of his game. And then within the good offense they've also had some turnover woes. And I think a lot of that comes from their overall, they're at least trying to play the right way, right? They're focused on ball movement, whether it's Julius, Ant during spurts. And I think that's valuable. It's essential. It's important for this team to play like that. Ant and Julius' sake, and then especially Jaden's sake, who I'm sure we'll talk about more. So there's this kind of 3-head monster forming with Ant and his on-demand scoring, Julius being at an all-NBA, all-star level, and then Jaden kind of rounding things out. So offensively, I think there's a lot of reasons to be encouraged that what we've seen will be sustainable for an 82-game season.
Yeah, that's the big story of the season so far. The offense, it's been incredible. And to add to some of the stats you gave, they're also number 1 in the NBA in true shooting percentage and efficiency field goal percentage. They're really high in offense because they simply don't miss shots at this point of the year. When you have Jaden McDaniels shooting over 50% from 3 and Randall shooting, and Ant's probably the second best shooter in the world right now. I mean, you just have a team that it's really fascinating for me to watch just how the identity of this team shifts, because I think we saw since the start of the Rudy Gobert era, every single year, it's been about this is a great defensive team. The past couple years, there's been offensive limitations, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that year where they were number 1 in defense, they were 17th in defensive rating or offensive rating.
Right.
And last year they moved to 10. And this year, it looks like unless their brain falls off, they'll probably be top 5 if these trends remain consistent. It's a really fascinating thing just watching the personality of this team kind of shift. And it's pretty awesome to see. I mean, part of it is they haven't played great defenses yet, and there's some truth to that. But you're just looking at a team that when Jaden McDaniels in particular is rising the way he is, not only as like a shooter, but just somebody who they can get the ball out to when there's really no offense happening, like what happened in Utah last night. And he can just kind of get to his spots and create and play off of Randall and Ant. there's just so much more optionality now. Like you said, they have a three-headed monster. So what do you think of just like the Jaden McDaniels front of this? Because I think this Jaden McDaniels leap right here, in my opinion, really opens the ceiling for this offense to such a high level.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's been a huge question mark really for all 6 years that Jaden's been with the Wolves is what can he do offensively? Defensively, he's been equally as effective as his talents have been intriguing. There's no denying what he could do defensively. But then offensively, it's like, okay, can he develop into like a 3-and-D wing? Or does he need the ball in his hands more often? We saw that last season. Now we're seeing it all kind of come together, I think. And the biggest thing that I keep going back to, I think – this version that we're getting of Jaden McDaniels right now perfectly fits the Wolves. And I wrote about this for zone coverage. When he has big scoring games, when he scores north of 20 points, the dude doesn't miss. He scored over 20 points 33 times in his career. Of those games, he shot 50% or better in 31 of those games. All but 2 times he shot over or 50% or better, and then 60% or better in 20 of those games, 70% or better in 13 of those games. He had that 21-point game against the Kings. 8 of 10 from the floor. Last night wasn't quite the same. He had 16 points, was under 50%. But this is who Jaden is. So again, we can go back to like, okay, is his shooting sustainable? And he has not been. He's been an inconsistent 3-point shooter. But I'd make the argument that what he's doing now is this efficiency. Whenever he's had the opportunity, whether with Ant out, Julius out, both of them out, whenever he has the opportunity to score 20 points, he doesn't miss. That's so important for the Wolves because there's just not a lot of shots to go around. Naturally, when Ant and Julius are out there, they take a lot of them. So then when Jaden is this efficient, he only needs like 10 or 11 shots to get to 20 points. And if you can get 20 points a game or 18 that he's averaging right now from your third option, like you said, that really opens the roof for this Wolves team.
And I think the idea of Jaden, one, not being a super high volume third option, but somebody who has that combination of I can attack on offense and get what I want, but I can also just do it in a way that doesn't get in front of Ant and Julius. I think that right there is such a critical formula for this team, right? Because if you had like, a Carmelo Anthony archetype as your third option on this team, things get really choppy. But the fact that Jaden McDaniels, when he gets called upon to, he can create efficiently. And like you said, this isn't new. That was an amazing stat you mentioned, the 33 games, 31 over 50%. But you can look at the playoffs last year when he's dropping 22 on OKC on multiple occasions, drops 30 against LA. And then the year before, he had some really good games against the Mavericks and Nuggets. When he is aggressive, he's just an efficient player. This isn't a volume player who gets right on a good night, right? This isn't the Jamal Crawford. Okay, he's just making everything. It happens occasionally. A decisive Jaden McDaniels is a very efficient Jaden McDaniels, which I think is such a unique thing about him. And I agree with you. I am fully sold on the Jaden McDaniels is legitimate front because of how he's creating. It's not that he's just efficient, but he's decisive as a creator. And when he's decisive, he has a full history of being efficient. It's a mindset shift with Jaden McDaniels that we are seeing in just full sway right now. And that's going to completely change what this team is capable of offense. It's the single biggest thing about this team this season that's so encouraging.
Yeah, well, and I think too, Jaden being the third option, we've seen like he has been very good when he's been the first option. Julius and Ant are out, but I think that's another reason to believe, like you said, this is something to believe in. This is something to buy into, at least for the rest of the season. Is that he doesn't have tremendous amount of. He's got 2 guys who one is playing at an MVP level, the other's playing at an All NBA level ahead of him. He's not like he knows that he's not out there having to shoulder a lot of the offensive load. I mean, you could think about like Andrew Wiggins when he went to Golden State and kind of became that third option, really blossomed as a player. Jaden came into the league and has been like a third, fourth. You've wanted him to get to a third option. The fact that he is just, I know I'm saying this a lot, a third option, I really think is not that it's anything new because it's like we said, this is kind of who he is or who he's been. But I think it's an important part to mention with his development that he's not having to shoulder a lot of shot attempts.
Yeah, totally. But what I think is really new about this Jaden McDaniels trend isn't just like this new discovery of talent, right? We've seen the talent for years. It's the fact that he has the freedom to expose that offensive talent. First 5 years, we can debate whether it was Chris Finch giving him the opportunity or just a maturity mindset shift. It's probably all of it. I think this year, this team has recognized how critical Jaden's development is now. It's go time.
Mhm.
There's no D'Angelo Russell here. There's no legitimate third go-to player. And McDaniels making a ton of money in his sixth season, going into that, it's kind of put up or shut up phase of his career. I think the team and Jaden have both been fully aligned on, okay, this is the year where you can actually integrate him into that opportunity. And not only has Jaden been ready, like he's showing he's ready, he's mentally ready now, but now the team is fully just bought in on the third option. I mean, we saw it last night against Utah, where we're recording this the day after the game. In Utah, even when he's not hot, like first 3 quarters, 4 points, in the fourth quarter, they're starting to look for him. They're starting to create shots for him. He starts getting aggressive, and he just has more freedom now than he ever has. And that freedom doesn't need to get in the way of Randall and Ant. I think short term, that's when things would get a little choppy, but it's just open now to the teams accepting that they need a third player. And
Mhm.
it's also really encouraging because long term, we're talking about micro. When you talk about macro, what is Anthony Edwards like prime going to look like? Do they have reliable complementary players in that window? And Jaden playing this great right now, assuming it continues throughout the season, it's just another sign that Minnesota might have a co-star legitimately in Ant's window, assuming he keeps playing like this. And I don't see why he couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to go back to a point you made earlier, I do think it is I think it is you can pin a little bit a good amount of the blame on Chris Finch, I think, for how like Jaden McDaniels' early season struggles. I've been a huge Chris Finch fan. I think he does great things for this team. And last season when the fans were kind of jumping off the boat on the Finch, and even to this season it happened again. I'm always kind of not on that boat or jumping out of that boat. But I think like when you look back at Jaden, compare his play now to where it was at this time last season. He was an offensive liability, and I wrote about that. I was really critical of him because the primary reason is he was just spotted up in the in the corners and on the wings, right? And he was kind of tasked to be a 3-and-D wing, and it was pretty obvious early on, like that's just not who he is. I made that because I didn't, I didn't expect Finch to kind of change how they used Jaden. And like we want to get Jaden in more, attack more closeouts, get downhill, get to the mid range. Because I made the assumption, I'm like, okay, if Jaden can't shoot 40% from three, what does his future look like with this team? That was narrow-minded to myself. I didn't expect Finch to kind of and the Wolves to do what they did and switch how they used McDaniels. So I think it is fair to look and criticize Finch last season. Maybe not harshly because he did ultimately, switch how he viewed McDaniels. But that was a huge part of it in the early part of last season. Is it wasn't even a mindset thing with Jaden. It was like he wasn't being utilized properly. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing how good he can be when he is allowed to be more free on offense. He's attacking more closeouts, and ultimately his teammates are looking for him.
Totally. And I don't think it's fair to fully bash Chris Finch the way this fan base can sometimes. I think Finch is a good coach. Do I think he's a perfect coach? No. I think his patience in some ways, for the better and worse, is so much better than me and a lot of fans, because on one hand, I think you can see the way he goes about young players, and he's not quick to just giving young players roles, big opportunities. And I think for certain other players, when he has a plan, he has a super long leash for it. And I think fans are still sometimes like, and I've been there many times, like, why aren't we making this change? Why does feels like Mike Conley can kill somebody and he'll still get the same opportunity? Whereas, like, if this young player makes one little mistake, he's out, right? There's definitely a disparity in what looks like a leash, but I don't think it's about that. I just think that Finch has a vision for the squad, and he's going to give it 40 games plus for it to come into fruition. I think we saw that last year. And I also think, to an extent, with the Jaden McDaniels thing, he's never been off of the Jaden McDaniels wagon. I mean, it sounded like a big proponent, like, don't include him in the Rudy Gobert trade. I see some Scottie Pippen and Jaden McDaniels. And it never felt like he wavered off of that. And this year, he was like, okay, it's time to let this kid run, right? He's been crawling when he was young. He started walking last year. Let's let him run. And he's definitely running. And I think it's kind of a more big takeaway with Finch, right? Yes, I think he isn't opposed to giving young players opportunities. I think he's just longer to it in certain ways than other players are. Jaden McDaniels is an example, right? You have to pass a lot of tests until you get there, right? Jaden McDaniels was doing the little things as a defensive player. He expands into a starter, and then he expands to this role. So I think Chris Finch has a very old school way with these young players. Like, you got to earn this opportunity, man. I need years of sample, and then you'll give it to him. And this year, he's been given the opportunity after years of proving his value otherwise. And I just think it's so exciting. It's here. We're finally here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and with Finch too, I even think you could shrink it down shorter than like a year by year thing. He judges players off of what he sees in practice, and then when they get little burns, what he sees during those burns. It's why Josh Minot never got consistent play here, because in practice Finch didn't see enough from him to be like, defensively, you have made progress. I'm going to continue. I'm going to play you, whatever. And then when he was in the game, Minot for a lot of it, like, was getting back cut. The flaws were evident. Now he's in Boston. He has an opportunity to work through some of that. Maybe he's developed whatever, and he's playing well. Good for him, but that shouldn't be a bash on Chris Finch. Finch was just going off of what he saw. And by the way, his position, you've got Naz Reid, Julius Randle, and then Rudy Gobert's a big man. But still, like, and you could say Josh, I suppose, maybe is more of a 3. But still, Finch likes a tight rotation. He's not just going to give players minutes. And I think a big reason why is the Wolves are trying to win games. They're not the Brooklyn Nets. They're not the Boston Celtics right now. They're trying to win. If Chris Finch was head coach, let's say this, for example, if Chris Finch was coaching the Brooklyn Nets, the Washington Wizards, Rob Dillingham would play 30 minutes a night. It is a huge reason why is what this team is trying to do right now, and that's to win. So if they're showing things like if Dillingham defensively is struggling, and he's been able to work through things, and now, he's actually becoming a part of this rotation. But if a guy like Minot, if a guy like Dillingham is showing these things, Finch isn't just going to keep, he's going to be like, hey, we are trying to win games. You are a liability. You are not helping us win. So I think that's a huge part of the Chris Finch conversation that I don't hear, at least I don't see from people talking about a lot, is like, maybe it's just overlooked. Like, the Wolves are trying to win. Therefore, Finch coaches the team to win.
He just wants the best players on the court at all times. And not only the best players, right? Because basketball is so talented now. It's becoming such a utility sport around your best players, right? It's Ant, it's Julius, and now it's Jaden. Those are your 3 best players. And Rudy is a core player. Everybody else has to kind of fit around that nucleus. So a guy like Rob Dillingham, right, to fully be embraced into this rotation, we've talked about this a lot, right? Rob, it seems like they're trying to transition him to more of a traditional point guard who's playmaking and allowing that to open up his own scoring rather than vice versa. And there's some truth to, look, the dude is playing stiff sometimes. The dude is playing indecisive because he doesn't know what he wants to do. And individually, that might not maximize his overall impact. But then the other question is, if Rob Dillingham is playing basketball the way he wants to next to Randall, Rudy, Jaden, etc., is that maximizing those guys? If Rob Dillingham is playing ISO basketball, who would you rather have play ISO? Rob Dillingham or Anthony Edwards, right? So if Chris Finch wants to play that style, he's going to give it to Ant. He's going to give it to Randall. Even Jaden is working his way up to that. So I think that's the Rob conversation too. It's about fitting around those players. If Dillingham takes those steps like a Jaden McDaniels did and has those specialized roles within this team, then he's going to work his way up and earn those opportunities. I think that's definitely a big takeaway to start the season. Like, a part of the Jaden McDaniels growth is that we're seeing evidence of how Chris Finch wants to develop young players. He's not against young players. He's against young players who played basketball in an individualistic style. He wants you to work your way up in more in a utility role and then earn opportunities later, like Jaden.
Yeah, and totally agree. Finch is not against playing young players, and the whole thing about the Wolves have been horribly defending the rim when Gobert's not out there, and it's Julius and Nas. Let's have Johan Berenger out there. That's tough again because he's just so young and so unproven. But I think evidence of Chris Finch, like look what he's done with. So Bones Highland started the year in the rotation. He was playing well. He played well in the preseason. And if you just look at his game logs, his minutes just kind of peter out as Rob Dillingham's get better. And Rob, because he was able to in a relatively small sample size early in the season, he had 12 minutes against Denver and then 16 against the Lakers. We had some good games. He compiled some good play, and then he's really replaced Bones in the rotation. So I think with regards to Dillingham, I would agree that I think he's been impacted negatively with how the Wolves have tried to use him because they need him to be more of a traditional point guard. That's not what he wants to be. Obviously, players make altercations to their game when they come into the league all the time. Honestly, probably happens more times than not.
Mm-hmm.
I think Austin Rivers was the one that said because he was drafted where he was used differently. Like if he were to go to a different team, that he could have been a star, right? But he was a role player his whole career. So with Dillingham, he's asked to be more of a role player right now. And he's asked to focus more on passing, but then they also want him to still play somewhat like he did in Kentucky and be a scoring threat, but primarily they want him to pass. So I do think that's been part of it with Dillingham, but we've seen he's been playing intelligently, offensively, and then defensively. I think to me, that's always going to be the aspect that'll keep Rob kind of off the floor is how often does he get targeted? And then the other part of that is how do the Wolves try to counteract that? How do they hide him defensively? Because there's ways to get around a bad defender on the floor. Obviously, it's not ideal to have your point guard also not be a great defender, but there's ways to work around it. So, yeah, I mean, all that's to say, Rob only played 3 minutes last night in Utah, but he's on the upswing. He is a young player playing in a Chris Finch winning system. It's part of that is also because, Shannon's been out, but still, this has been encouraging for Dillingham for sure. Another positive too regarding this is that they've been beating the bad teams. We kind of opened with that. That's not been the case. I believe they had like the worst or the second worst record last season when favored to win. That is not good. Now you got to beat the best. You got to beat the best teams, right? Like you're not going to make the conference finals if you can't play well against good teams. Again, I think that's something that law of averages will even out over the season. So I do think that's an important thing to just keep in mind. 7-4, things are going well. There's still question marks, but there's still a lot of season left.
And that's a big takeaway I have with this team as well. When you look at them beating the crap out of bad teams, we've never had that happen, right? Like the Utah game, even though they were down the first half and they're coming off of a back-to-back, and historically that's a game where they just kind of fall apart. A part of me just felt like they were going to figure it out, and I wasn't that worried about them. And then the third quarter happens, and then Anthony Edwards, he gets like 19 in the third. And then Jaden gets 12 in the fourth. And I'm looking at this team right now, and these are signs we did not see years ago. Ant and Jaden willingly being productive in games like this. This is when Ant gets the random 13-point game against Charlotte on a Tuesday night. But instead, Ant's like going for career highs against these guys. Or even if he's not, he's going to have that quarter where he's like, I'm going to take you guys out now. Not only am I good enough to, but now I want to, even if I just have to, exude a little bit of my energy. So I think this team right now, a very positive sign is this team is growing up in front of our very eyes. They are taking care of the bad teams, which is very integrated into the team's DNA, I think, throughout the season. And granted, they are playing bad teams, but we're seeing the turnover percentage get much better throughout the season. I mean, a few games ago, they were like bottom 7 in turnover percentage. Now they're middle of the pack of the league. They're taking care of the ball more. They're playing harder against bad teams. They're taking them out. And sure, we need to see them against high-level basketball teams as we take on a Denver, right? But I think it's really encouraging that Minnesota is showing up against these bad teams because historically they're going to take care of enough really good teams. They're going to be above 500 against top 10 teams like they are every single year. If Minnesota continues to play with this heart and this effort against bad teams, that's how you end the season as a 3 or a 2 seed. And we're seeing them not only take care of these bad teams, but also the young players who are most responsible for not taking care of the bad teams are showing up and they're playing fantastic, from Ant to Jaden. So I think that's really exciting, watching this team, spearheaded by those two young stars who are the face of the franchise, leading that and growing up into not young players, but high-level veterans.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, this has been regarding Anthony Edwards, just a tremendous start to the season. I have in my notes, this version of Ant can win MVP. What we're seeing from him right now can win MVP. I understand it's still really early in the season. He's only played 7 games, but in 6 of those games, he has been inevitably great, and that's where you're seeing that maturity kind of shine through. I've talked about being like inevitably great before, and you look at historically, every MVP is inevitably great. SGA was last year, and what that is it goes deeper than just scoring 30 points a night. Obviously, that's important, but being inevitable is like in the fourth quarter, your team needs a bucket. Who's going to go? It's always going to be you. How about middle of the game? Your team is hitting a wall. The other team's like inevitable. Every single night, the type of greatness that player has. And we're seeing that with Ant this year. You can look at it. He had the 41 points in the season opener in Portland, 10 in the fourth. He willed them to the win. And then he had 31 in LA, shot 58% from the floor. That game was it was masked because of Luka's 49 points. Then he goes down against Indiana, misses 4 straight, comes back. He has that clunker against New York. The whole team does. And then Utah comes to town. It's a must win. Not only that, the Wolves just had to play well in that game. They do just that. Ant scores 37. He shoots, 57% from the floor. Then in Sacramento, 26 points, 44%. You're kind of like, okay, whatever. It's kind of pretty standard Ant stat line. But then he has that 16-point close to the first half. And that's one of those stretches where it's like Sacramento's kind of hanging around and the Wolves, missed an opportunity to put the game, to kind of take control. I think Jim Pete mentioned that. And then Ant comes in and just is like you mentioned, I'm just going to end this. I'm just going to eject this game with a charge. It doesn't, regardless of any other fact. And then last night, he had that 21-point boomlet, as Jim Pete and Alan Horton like to say, in the third quarter, 35 on the night. He just wasn't going to let them lose that game. And that is, again, you tie all those things together. That's what an MVP does. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying Ant's going to win MVP. I'm not making that proclamation right now. Although I think in every game, aside from that game in New York, you can look at it and be like, yeah, that is a player who is going to finish legitimately. He was like 8th, I think, in MVP voting last year. That is a player who's going to finish in the, top 3, whatever, in the MVP voting. And the other thing I noticed last night, I know this is very long-winded, and this is a very small thing, but he had Ace Bailey in an isolation, and he got Ace Bailey to jump. And he did the thing that SGA, that Luka, that Embiid, everybody does. He leaned into Bailey, who was airborne, got the foul. I understand fans love Ant's ethical hoops. But again, look at MVPs. They're at the free throw line all the time. It's because you can control the game. When you're at the free throw line, you slow things down. You give yourself a little breather. They're free points, right? If you shoot 15 free throws in a game, that 15 points, free points, right? And I'm not saying that Ant needs to, or I'd like to see him become SGA in that regard. But he does need to get to the line more often, and that is a way to do it, especially because he's in the mid-range more often. So all of these things together, I like you mentioned, he's growing right in front of our eyes, and right now, tangible evidence to believe that he could be an MVP at the end of the year.
Why can't he be the best player in the world? Seriously. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it, just the attention to detail and just the ability not to only just know when to take over games like we've seen recently, but just I said this the other day. Of course, Victor Wembanyama is an alien, right? He's 7'5", can do everything. He's a fluid athlete, guard skills, incredible rim protector. Anthony Edwards is also an alien. He is one of the 3 best athletes in the entire NBA, reminiscent of a Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade. But now he's also the 2nd best shooter in the league. You can bank him making 5 threes every single game efficiently, and the level of difficulty is crazy. And now he's adding these little nuances like they mentioned on the broadcast. He's trying to add 2019 James Harden with the ability to, draw contact and make defenses bite to open lanes to the rim. I thought we saw multiple signs of evidence of that against Utah, where he's going to dribble the big or the guard to sleep, and then boom, the paint's open, he's exploding, and he's a better athlete than Harden, so he's going to freaking slam it in your face. I mean, we're seeing him, and it's not fully realized yet. He's 24, but you're seeing him try things like know when to bait a foul, know when to dribble the defense asleep and attack. His space creation, I mean, the talent's there. He's the athlete. He has great feet and everything, but you can see his mind starting to work. And I just think he's like not all the way there, but he's this close to clicking and just being the best scorer in the league. I think it's there because you're not going to find, maybe we'll never see this again, but somebody that athletic with that handle, that space creation, just intuition, and then you top it off with somebody who's the second best shooter in the league. I think he's growing up. This team is growing up in front of our very eyes. And the biggest reason for that is because they have the head of the snake, who's a man now.
Yeah, well, and the thing that just has impressed me the most has been he really hasn't let the defense dictate what he wants to do. And I think that's a very important part of like any player who wants to win MVP. You just have to be able to get to your shots. And we've seen that in Portland, in LA, these last couple games too. It's like he just gets where he wants. He kind of just does. He's able to, whether it's by baiting, like an Ace Bailey, right? Utilizing the pump fake a lot better than he has in the past. All these things, he's just able to then combine that with the strength that he's already had, the footwork he's already had, and improved ball handle. There's only so much you can really say about him. You just have to kind of let it all play out. But yeah, it's just it really is incredible to watch a guy like him. It's been a lot of fun really just to watch him develop. To be honest, and we've kind of been, rising through our coverage of the Timberwolves at similar times, and it's been really fun to just not only watch him for all 6 years, but kind of analyze his game. And I know you can relate to this, and just the player he was when he was a rookie. And like you mentioned, he's only 20. He's only 23 or whatever. He's 6 years in, and we're talking like this about him. 24, and it's like he's 6 years in. We're talking about him like this. He's X amount of years away from his prime. So like I mentioned, there's only so much you could say right now. You just kind of have to let things play out. You have to let this greatness that he is exuding play out.
We have so much more Anthony Edwards basketball in front of us, which I think is the exciting part. Because like you said, I mean, I think for anybody who grew up watching the team, or you and me who've kind of got into the content creation world with the Timberwolves, just watching this grow in front of us and realizing just how lucky we are. Because imagine if you and I were, shout out to Dane and Kyle, because they went through hell and we haven't had to go through that. But growing up with this team where we question everything and you get heartbroken by what was supposed to be the next great trio and Cat, Wiggins, and Zach, that being taken away from us, and the ownership and everything. But just how linear this has been, it's hard to grasp how lucky we are as Timberwolves fans to just watch this all come together. It's crazy because I don't know what it's like to have a kid graduate high school. I'm 22, so I haven't had a kid yet. Hopefully not soon, but it's like watching somebody grow up in front of your very eyes. And this goes for Jaden, this goes for Nas, and honestly, this goes for the entire organization. Just watching them piece by piece grow into players with expectation to win, and not just these young talented kids who are worried, are they going to end up like everybody else? I love it.
Yeah, well, and like you mentioned, it's kind of top to bottom, ownership, front office, coaching, players. It's just all been a lot of fun. There's reason, and I think as fans, you have to be willing to, you can't just be so doom and gloom, be like, hey, we played really great, Western Conference Finals, where's the championship? As a fan, that's a really depressing mindset to have. You have to be able to find joy in the small things. I mean, they're not really small, but the things throughout the season, right? The Gobert winning Defensive Player of the Year, that Game 2 win in Denver, all these things. That's why being a fan is so fun. And this team is operating really well right now, I think, top to bottom. And evidence of how lucky Wolves fans are again today with the firing of Nico Harrison and how that whole debacle in Dallas kind of took shape. And now the Mavs are in limbo. They're in a really weird spot. They've got flag, but now they're geared up to win now. That was Nico Harrison's whole thing. So they're kind of in that odd zone. And you go across the street to a One Twins way. They're in a weird, spot. And the Sacramento Kings, we can go down the line. The Sacramento Kings are in a weird spot. And then the Wolves, it's like you just see an ownership group, a front office staff, a coaching staff, and players who all seem to be on the same level and are giving Wolves fans reasons to come out to games consistently, buy season tickets, buy jerseys, buy Prince jerseys, black trees, all these things. They may not have a championship right now. They may never have a championship. That would be a disappointment. If Ant plays 15 or whatever years, they don't have a championship. That is a disappointment. But if they're constantly winning and they're constantly doing all these things, like that is good. This is good. This is a really fun time for fans to be a part of. And like you mentioned, some of the younger fans, they never even experienced any bad at all. They kind of came up in this come up with the Wolves. So yeah, I mean, this is a fun time for the fan base, and it's a lot of fun to cover.
And there's this thing, and this expands not only to basketball, but pretty much everything. Like if you ask somebody what's their favorite memory in their childhood, it's very rarely the biggest thing that happened to them. Sometimes it's, you know what? I love Saturday mornings when my mom made pancakes, right?
That's a great point. That's a really good way to put it.
I loved going to school and seeing this teacher give us candy every Friday morning, right? Very little things are what you remember. And when you look at sports and it's always just what's the next step, you lose that little things. You lose the community. You lose the drive, the rise. You lose the journey. And we can go and talk about, will this team win a championship? Will it not? We don't know. But, we can even go further and say, with this team, right? Can Rudy Gobert play to this level offensively against high-level teams? Do they have enough depth? Is Jaden really a third guy? Is Randall really a second guy? Does this team have a point guard? We can do that. We can have those conversations in future episodes. But the most important thing, and why everybody is on the show right now, honestly, is because sports make us feel good. Sports, we have an emotional connection to the little things. It's the community. It's the familiarity. And this team where they're at right now, to have all of that and additionally follow a team that is aligned, is functional, you have talent, you win a lot. You don't get that a lot. You don't get that a lot, especially in Minnesota sports. So it's really important to be where your feet are and just really embrace where this team is. Yeah. Only 11 games into the season. And we have so much more to figure out, but I think it's a really fun time to be a Wolves fan.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to embrace the little things when you have a player like Ant where you can, because human nature, right? You're always looking to the next thing. So as a fan, if you are trying to stay present and you're like, hey, we've got a guy who, like I mentioned, for as long as he's on the team, we're going to be trying to win a championship. Like, should be sleeping pretty good at night, right? Ultimately, so that I think does make it easier to just kind of be focused on the present. I mentioned the Sacramento Kings. They have like no direction. They're probably going to blow it up at the deadline. They should have blown it up sooner. They not only are a middling team right now, they don't have they don't have an Anthony Edwards. They don't have a Tyrese Halliburton or a De'Aaron Fox, anyone to build around long term. So they're an example of like, hey, they're going to blow it up. And not only is the here and now sucky, it's also probably going to be sucky for a long time. So yeah, I mean, all of that is just to say, I do think Wolves fans are lucky to just be able to experience a team. They're not only are they lucky, they're deserving to experience a team like this consistently.
And this team is the Sacramento Kings in the past. This team was the Charlotte Hornets in the past. A lot of us endured decades of bad basketball. And it's not guaranteed this will last forever. Maybe it'll come back in 10 years. Maybe it'll come back in 5. I don't know. I'm not manifesting it, but you never know what life brings. So enjoy the ride. Enjoy the losses, right? And enjoy the journey. I think that's also a really important takeaway with this team is just how lucky it is that we have sustainable success.
Yeah, where a 4-7 or for a 7-4 start, you've got fans that are kind of like a little uneasy about things. It's like this could have been a 1-9 start 4 or 5 years ago, right? Like, so yeah, I think it's all, perspective, right? But yeah, this is a good place to be. You said, find joy in the wins. I think or find joy in the losses. This is very in-depth conversation we're having right now, very nuanced, but it's important though. I mean, I think this is like you mentioned, this is an important part of sports. It starts with, realizing that these players are all human and there are going to be ups and downs, and understand all the other things that come with the game, come with the season. All these, there's just so much more to the game than the wins and the losses and the championship banners, which I understand there's none in Target Center on the Wolves side, but still, this is sports is really a beautiful thing. They can bring us together, and they can ignite a city, which the Wolves have certainly done by way of Anthony Edwards these last 6 years.
Yep, Charlie. And we always, even in the first episode, we can get into these deeper philosophical conversations, and we'll get into them in the future. For everybody who enjoys it, doesn't enjoy it, it's going to happen. So accept it, embrace it. It's coming. But Charlie, it was super fun. Just, talking about the Wolves, and not only in a way that is like the defense needs to get better, the Rudy thing, all that stuff. It's just fun to talk about the things going for this team with you, Charlie. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, man, this was a great time. I always appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, Charlie, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for listening. We will continue making more Timberwolves content as we figure out the season. If you guys ever want to be on the show every single Friday, I have Wolves Fandom Fridays, so you have your opportunity to bring your hot takes onto the show and talk about the state of the team, some fun hypotheticals, reactions. That's what Wolves Fandom Friday is for. So if you want to come on the show in the future, just DM me on Instagram or X, What's on Tap NBA, or just email me, wilder@wilderadams.com, and we'll get you on the show. Charlie, it's a pleasure. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom.